Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's another week as we inch closer to the end of summer. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Hope you had a great week since we last spoke. On this episode, I'm going to share my thoughts on something that's very touchy, but I feel it's time that Real Talk has a real discussion about it. So when I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about the migrant crisis and specifically about New York and the migrant crisis. I'll be right back. So welcome back to 247 Real Talk Podcast. As I said, my name is Julian Perry. I'm the host of 247 Real Talk. And on this episode, first of all, let me welcome all of my listeners, both on the audio and on the YouTube channel. And also say a very warm welcome to all the new listeners as we continue to share the YouTube and the audio-only version. And I can see that subscribers are increasing, especially on the audio-only version. I would like to get a much bigger audience on the YouTube version, this live version. So please do help me out. Do like, do subscribe, do share it with anyone you think would be interested or anyone who could become interested by listening to the past episode or this current episode. It's very much appreciated as I work to build a community, to share, to get stronger, to build a movement that will make a difference in the rest of our lives and the lives of our children. So this week I decided to talk about the migrant crisis. I did speak to a few friends about it. Everyone has mixed feelings. But so let me preface everything by saying this. I'm a migrant. You can probably hear from my accent, I'm a migrant. I have no issue with any country in the world, I think, taking in migrants because I think we are a world of people. There's nothing that says we have to stay put where we were born. Migrating, moving, finding new paths, new careers, new people, moving for relationships, moving for jobs, moving for so many different things, education, moving for a better life. They're all part of living here on this planet, living here on planet Earth. And we should be sharing our, to a certain extent, our borders and allowing people to move and change their lives in all respect in the proper manner. Now, when someone like myself, who's an immigrant, I'm a citizen here, but who's originally an immigrant, when someone like myself starts to have the conversation about the migrant crisis, people immediately point their finger and say, "But aren't you an immigrant?" And so, to address those people and to have this conversation, I wanted to talk about a few points. This will be probably like last week's episode. It won't be a long episode, but I think it's important that I want to touch on a few key things that I wrote down here on my screen. So let's look at what's going on in New York specifically, or in the United States, but I say New York because that many of the many states with Republican governors are shipping their migrants to New York because New York is a sanctuary state. When I came to the United States of America, I had to go through a process where I was a minor. My parents were sponsored. My father's brother who sponsored my father and my mother and us as kids as a family had to show a financial ability to be able to take care of us. I think it was for 6 months. I could be wrong, but you had to show a certain amount of income and a certain amount of savings to be able to help us get on our feet so that we would not become a burden on society. In the process of getting to where we could become a part of this society. I'm sort of reaching in my train of thought because I'm trying to think back about certain times. In that process, um, there were things that each family member had to, or paperwork and certain criteria, certain things had to be gotten for each family member. One of them was um, um, police clearance, if I remember correctly. So you had to go to the police department. They would go through your history and make sure you had no criminal record. There were immunizations. We had to get all these different vaccinations prior to being able to enter into this country. So we had to make sure that when we got here, we were well immunized. We didn't present a health risk. We didn't present a criminal risk, at least off the bat. I mean, anybody can change, right? But we're talking about entering. We had to enter with a clean slate, all immunized, free from any criminal background, and going to someone who said, I will take responsibility for this family financially for X amount of time with X amount of resources so that they don't become a burden on society. As I think about what's going on right now, even as an immigrant, there's a few things that worry me. And I've been in the United States now close to 40 years, long time. And I wrote a few things down. Now, I touched on the first one, so I'll go back into since I touched on that. Having a sponsor, someone who's willing to say, if you need, I can provide financially, means that we don't get the ripple effect of eventually the cost of the city and state managing and paying for feeding, clothing, housing these migrants becomes a cost that gets passed down to the people of New York and the people in the United States as increase in taxes, increase the cost of living overall. Because someone has to pay for it, and it has to come out of the budget of money that was probably slated for other things. So that's one thing I'm concerned about, and this is not one or two or three. These are, I think the last count I heard was like 56,000 in New York City alone. Now, let me backtrack real quick 1 second to say that I also think that every country in the world, as it welcomes migrants, should have a quota per year, X amount of people in, so that the growth can properly be socialized with whatever society, whatever city, state is going or country they're going to, and they can fall into place and become part of productive society before you take the next set of people. And when these kids come, there's things like schools. Migrant kids can't come and just sit down and don't go to school. Mine's a terrible thing to waste. And once they're here, we have a responsibility to make sure that they go through education, because if they're going to become productive members of society, that is part of a prerequisite to doing so. So they need to go to school. So the next challenge is, as we integrate these kids who have come without any vetting, without any immunization into our schools, what are we exposing our children to? We know for a fact that our children are immunized. So I guess the answer to that is probably already in place, that all the kids who will be added to New York City schools will be immunized. But we don't know what they had before. So how do you immunize someone who doesn't have an immunization card or any record? Is it okay to immunize them against everything? Does immunize them against everything become an overdose of something? I don't know. These are medical questions, but these are my thoughts. And then, are they possibly coming from somewhere with an illness that we don't immunize here or even know about because it's foreign to our land, and they're introducing it into our society and into the environment with our kids? Again, I'm an immigrant. Let me reiterate that. I believe in a proper process in coming here. My family had to do the vetting, the wait, the whole thing. But there's a method to that process. And that worries me, because now we have kids in school and we really don't know what they will be exposed to. I'm thinking too, as I look at my list here, about people. It's such an influx without vetting for a certain amount of time. Do we have people who are part of a maybe a drug industry, a drug cartel, or something like that, taking advantage of this wave of immigrants to infiltrate it with their people, so they can come now to states across the United States and set up the other end of the chain, so that now they're in a really good position to do their drug trade and whatever back and forth. Is that a possibility? I don't know all the details of everything that's happening with these migrants, but that is a concern of mine personally. A lot of countries that we talk about where these migrants are coming from, we've heard that they're escaping gang violence. We've seen right here in New York how many gangs have come from other countries. I don't want to name countries because this is not an issue of prejudice. I am a man of color like they are, but I'm saying they come to this country, and we've got parts of even New York where the gangs have come and they've set up their communities. They live together, and very often we hear of gang violence, gang murders. I myself was part of a jury pool in a horrific gang killing, several years ago. So that's another concern. We already had an issue, and most of the time when these gang members are caught, they're illegally here. And so, where is the vetting happening? Is it happening? Are these people just crossing the borders? And what kind of process are they going through? Who are they? When they have no identification and we're not turning them away, are these people possibly deportees who have made their way back here now? Are they deportees who've committed heinous crimes, murder, rapes, and were deported or ran from the law, and now they're able to infiltrate and come back in because of this mass of people? Maybe someone can respond to this podcast and tell me that I'm wrong, that there are processes in place that we don't know about to ensure that doesn't happen at the point of entry into the United States. But I'm not hearing that. So I'm just speaking in concern, with my concerns, and the fact that I have kids here, you have families and kids here. Everyone who's hearing me has someone they care about and love here, and they certainly don't want them to end up in danger because of a situation like that. Remember, there was a call at one point to see if people were willing to house migrants in their homes. Who are you bringing into your home? Where is the process that said, again, this person is not someone who committed a criminal act here, someone who was deported for some reason, someone who served time for some crime and then were deported, and they've made their way back because they've just come in with this, like a wave, with this influx of people. So, it is a concern, and I am torn. I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you if it wasn't for the allowances of the United States of America to let me come in as an immigrant. I'm grateful for that. It's changed my life in an amazing way. However, I'm saying at the same time that I went through a vetting process. I went through a process whereby the United States knew everything about my father, my mother, my brother, and I, all our family, and they knew from police records, from mental health records, from immunization records, that they were taking a good chance on these people coming in. And they knew that my father's brother, my uncle, had the means which he had to provide proof for to help us through and us not to become a burden on the society. There are people in New York who lived here for many years, who were born here, who are going through their daily lives here. And we can see, looking around New York itself, and I'm saying New York because I'm in New York and because we've received, again, so many migrants from other states. But we see that there are services here that so many people who were here before need. There's so many things. There's so much homelessness already on the street. There's a lack of housing already without the migrants. There's crime that the police are working hard to get under control. There's the influx of weapons, the influx of drugs, and now you add this layer on top of it, and it's not being shared equally across the nation, right? To me personally, even though New York is a sanctuary city, this is a problem where people are crossing the borders into the United States. To me, this should be a federal problem. If New York is a sanctuary city and we can show the numbers of people that are coming in here, there should be a federal budget that's assigned for each person that comes to New York. X amount of money is put aside to maintain that money, to maintain that person. The financial burden should not fall on the state, especially a place like New York State where the federal government gets incredible money from us every year in the form of taxes. A lot of money. This was, I think, during COVID, when we weren't getting the vaccinations that we needed in New York quickly enough and in the volume enough and the supplies. It was made very clear that New York pushed back and said, look, you can't tell us this nonsense because the federal government gets a tremendous amount of money from New York every year. So where is the help now? New York City has its own people to take care of. There are people who work in New York City. They're municipal workers, city government workers, I'm sure out there, who are probably still waiting for their contracts and their raises and all of these things. And all these things take money. And how do you do that when you're distracted by this migrant crisis where no one seems to be doing anything except putting all the burden of it on our mayor? And that is unfair. Our mayor has a tremendous burden of dealing with this and finding solutions, and always hearing people criticizing. And look, everybody knows me by now. I saw a very even keel. I have no affiliation to any ideology, any political ideology, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian. I believe in right and wrong. And I honestly believe that this mayor has been put in a situation where it's not sustainable. He almost being set up to fail because no one else is dealing with this issue in the numbers that he has. We have regardless of how big New York is, there are finite boundaries. There is finite space. And then let me touch on this also because I heard someone from Long Island complain about the fact that they pay $20,000 in taxes and you want to move migrants into their area. And I said to someone today, I want to read between the lines of what the person is saying, because we jump to conclusions right away and we say, hey, you know what? These are people living in the rich areas and they don't want, they're prejudiced. That may be the case. But I'm hearing something else too. All those things that I laid out, all the things about criminal records and immunization and overcrowding of schools when you're paying $20,000 in taxes, when you move to a certain neighborhood and you're paying to live in a certain neighborhood, most of us who buy homes and move, one of the considerations is the schools, right? One of the considerations is the facilities, right? The parks, the playgrounds, the social gathering ability, the commercial gathering abilities, the quietness of our neighborhoods, the safety of our neighborhoods. All these things are part of the consideration when you decide to move and buy a house and pay as much as $20,000 a year in taxes. And then you have to look at the police departments out in these areas. They're not like New York City NYPD where there's 30-something thousand strong. They have smaller police departments. Their response time to incidents is longer because there are less of them that have to drive further. You don't want the place saturated with crime where the police departments can't keep up with it, and where people are being hurt and shot and killed. And I'm not saying this won't happen without the migrants there. I can think of a friend of mine and hear him jump at me right away and say, but that happens without them being here. 100% correct. I am just saying that if you start shifting people to all neighborhoods across the state, you increase the population of those neighborhoods. You change the dynamic, and then they don't have the resources, human resources or monetary resources in services or anything to be able to deal with that. There's already, I believe, a limit as to how many children should be in schools and how many students there should be per teacher. So when you talk about 56,000 people being added, I don't know how many of them are children. But when you increase that many children in schools, you're increasing let's back up a second. You're increasing the classroom size. Those places may not have the budget to hire more teachers. They may not have the space in the school to house more children. You may be dealing with children who are coming from other countries where they don't speak a lick of English. These schools may not have anything in place to deal with that. I mean, many of the kids who grew up in these communities, if they come here as children, many of them are bilingual. But I don't. I mean, not speaking any English at all, and being of a certain, let's say you're a 7 or 8 year old kid, 9 year old kid, 10 year old kid, and you come here and you don't speak a lick of English. What are we supposed to do with you? Where does that start? There needs to be a separate mechanism to deal with that. You can't just integrate that and fold it into the existing schools. So this is a big issue. It's a solvable issue. It's a solvable issue with enough resources from the federal government helping to in places like New York especially to create environments, let's use that word, that cater to the migrants, that vet them, that make sure that they have background clearance, that make sure they're properly immunized, that make sure that they're fully checked out health wise, that make sure there's a process to ascertain their level of English, their level of education, and if necessary, even use empty buildings, and we have a lot of those in New York City now, and transform them to schools, and then hire, here's an opportunity for jobs, hire teachers, bilingual teachers or whatever, to go into these schools and integrate these students by keeping them at their educational level in their own language while giving them a requirement of a course to learn English. I mean, these are a lot of things I'm talking about, and I'm just spitting off the top of my head. And I'm doing this because I want to show you that I'm not just coming to you with complaints or coming to you with my concerns, but I have thought about solutions. But all this requires money which I think I hear our mayor calling over and over from the federal government, and just not enough is coming. And at this point, we need to speak louder. You can join me in this, because I would be an advocate for the migrants in a method of integration that works. There was some time, I guess about a month or two ago, where there was some issue outside one of the hotels where they didn't want to stay in the hotel. They slept on the pavement, and then there was an altercation, and they assaulted someone. A regular person with a family who's coming with kids or whatever is not likely to get into an argument and assault people on the street. So we have all types of people, right? And again, how many of these people were vetted? You might not want to hear what I'm saying. You might feel that, he's an immigrant. He shouldn't be saying that. But what I'm saying is the truth. If I were an adult and I was being sponsored, and they did a police report and found out that I had been convicted of assault and whatever crimes, they have every right to say, no, you're not coming to America. We're not even issuing you a visitor's visa. You will not be a resident of the United States of America. And America has the right to do that just as every other country in the world. So I'm just simply saying, come in the right way. That ship has sailed. So help New York and all the other sanctuary cities. I don't want to leave them out. All the other sanctuary cities around the United States that are receiving migrants. The federal government has to step up and provide more than enough funds to create the proper environment and the proper mechanisms and systems so that these migrants, once eventually they can get vetted quickly and they can get the all clear. They can also segregate the ones who they find out have to be sent back because they're criminal, whatever the case may be. The point is, when you ask for money, when I'm in New York, ask for money and he's not getting money fast enough and enough money from the federal government, I think about Ukraine. United States has now spent trillions of dollars in Ukraine. I keep saying this. I've said this. I said this about student loans, and I'll say it again. Charity begins at home. Here we are spending, got to be millions at some point, of U.S. dollars on migrants who have not been vetted. But our Congress will sit there and deny Americans relief in student loans. Go as far as to take the Biden student loan plan to court to defeat it. Senators and congresspeople who got PPP loans forgiven in the millions of dollars went to court to stop $10,000 and $20,000 relief for American citizens. And now here we are spending more on that. on people who haven't earned the right to be here. I'm sorry. When I say earn the right, who haven't gone through a process prior to getting here, so when they land on this soil, they have been vetted. Think of how unfair that is. I will always bring back, my friend always says to me, you always come back to the student loan situation. I do. We tend to treat the own people in our own society like second-class citizens. And we go above and beyond for others who have not, proven their worth here. Again, not against I am an immigrant. I would keep repeating that over and over again. But there is a process that needs to be done to ensure that you and I are safe. And to make sure that we get fair treatment. If you're going to spend millions of dollars in Ukraine, make sure you have millions of dollars to spend to help students in the United States who are overwhelmed with student loan debt. Make sure you have millions of dollars if you can spend millions of dollars to help migrants adjust into a country where they came in, sort of against the will or against the borders of the United States, then you have enough money, twice as much, to help your own people. Anyway, I've said enough about that. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of messages and a lot of thoughts about it. Please, I don't deal with hate mail. I am one who believes in open dialogue. I very rarely block people. But if you come to me with hate, I will, because hate is a non-starter for a conversation. Anger is a non-starter for a conversation. A difference in opinion can be discussed. I can show you my side, you can show me yours, and I can say in many cases, people have shown me their perspective, and I've looked at them and said, you know what, I never thought about it that way. You're right. So I can change, you can change, we all can change, but we can do that as a united body of people for the betterment of our lives and for the lives of people who come after us. Before I end this episode, I want to share something with you real quick, something personal. Every time I end an episode, one of the last things I say is, be good to yourselves, take care of yourselves and each other. I say that because it's so important for us to live lives of looking out for each other, understanding that as much as we believe in tomorrow, tomorrow is not promised. Last Friday morning, it was raining heavily in New York City, in Brooklyn. I was on my way to work. I got off the railroad at Atlantic Avenue, and one of the days I went in early. I was on my way to work, and I crossed from walking along the sidewalk of Flatbush Avenue, crossing Lafayette, which is the cross street, Lafayette Avenue, I believe it is. I was almost to the other side. I was holding an umbrella. And I'm going to say this the way I can say it. God said to me, look out. I turned to my left, and all I saw was the center medallion of a yellow cab upon me. I remember screaming very loudly to get the driver's attention. At the same time, the cab hit me. I remember putting my hand out as a normal human instinct. I had the umbrella, so my fist was folded. Right here, you can't see it. It's all bruised up. I could feel the crunch as I hit that emblem. I could feel the shot through my arm. Somehow, I think I can't really tell you everything that happened, but the upper part of my arm got hit as well, and my leg by the front of the car. I remember a split second when I saw the car coming. I knew at that point that I was either very badly injured or I was going to die. Because I was in the center of the car. He had come and made a quick turn to try to beat the light. And because he turned so fast, he made a wide turn with all that speed and ended up in this wide turn almost to the pavement of the other side of the road. So I had almost cleared the road. I was almost on the pavement. I had the right of way. In that moment that I can't really recall, I'm not sure if it's because he must have slammed his brakes for a moment, but something lifted me from the front of that car center onto the sidewalk, landing on my feet. I remember at that point, I had a shock, whatever, but I turned. I saw him, he turned his head, and he took off. So I was a victim of a hit and run. Police responded, ambulances responded. They treated me at the scene. I didn't have any broken bones at the time. I did have to follow up with emergent care yesterday. It was because I still had a lot of residual pain. Um, the police promised me they'll do a report, which I shall go to the precinct and get shortly. And they're hoping that with that big intersection, that there are cameras and they can catch this guy who hit and run, because he belongs in jail. He belongs in jail simply because when you don't have the decency, look, he was coming down Flatbush, he made the right, he realized the light was going to change, he stepped on the gas, and it was pouring rain, and when he made the right, it was so wide, it's dark. I didn't have on dark clothes, but or maybe I did, but I didn't have on black. I had on some dark color, but the point is he never saw me. And in his haste to make that turn, somehow he didn't kill me. I'm hoping they catch him because he looked at me while the car was still rolling by, and then he stepped on the gas. He didn't have the decency to come out and say, "Are you okay?" Maybe he didn't have his papers in order, maybe something else. But there's no difference than the hit and runs we see in New York City every day, where people are left lying on the road, dying and die, and the driver is gone. I'm not sure if he has damage to the front of his car, maybe not. In the way I bounced off, I really can't tell you what happened, except I will say this. For those of you out there who believe, you can. For those of you who don't, that's up to you. But I say simply, the reason that I went from the center of that hood with no escape being run over to the sidewalk, God lifted me. That's the only thing I can say, because since I have no recollection of it, and it's a miracle to me that I made it, God lifted me. So as I end this episode today, understand that you can leave your home to go to work. You can kiss your spouse goodbye. You can kiss your kids goodbye. You can make all the plans for when you return. And something like that, out of nowhere, unexpected, you could have never imagined, can change your life forever. I didn't get lucky. I got blessed. I could have been laid up in the hospital right now. I could have been paralyzed. And the worst case scenario, my family could have been planning to say goodbye. I pray to God every day that He guides and keeps me. I pray that I have a long life to be around my family and my kids and watch them and enjoy this life with them. But we must not take anything for granted. And in doing so, that means that even this that I'm doing, as many times as I preach about becoming a part, sending me messages, let's build something together, we need to recognize how important it is. You can't leave it for tomorrow, when you retire, when you get time. Make time. Because all we have, the time that we have, is on a clock, and it's ticking. I am always, always so humbled and honored to have these conversations with you. I thank you for over the 3 years I've been doing this, the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have downloaded episodes, who listen to my episodes, who give me support, who give me ideas, who have conversation, who leave messages, all in an honorable, polite, and supportive way that supports forward momentum and movement in the right direction. I wish you all a fantastic week. I wish you all a fantastic Labor Day weekend, unofficial end of summer, and a fantastic week ahead as the kids head back to school and our hectic lives begin again as we sort of enter a new season where holidays start, and you got elections, local governments, and you got certain elections in November, and you have Thanksgiving, all these things. So it's that season. It's a season of giving. It's a season of sharing. It's a season of change. Most of all, it should always be a season of supporting each other. Again, it's been my honor, my privilege, and my pleasure. Do enjoy your week ahead. Make sure you take care of yourselves. And please take care of each other.